Smash Brothers. It is still for most pros the quintessential Smash Brothers controller.
Yeah, it was designed for, or Smash Brothers was designed to take advantage of other capabilities.
And games like F-Zero, GX, I can't imagine playing with a different controller, to be honest.
I mean, I wish I could, because that would mean they re-released it somewhere.
Yeah, but I feel like I would play it, and then I'd be like, it's not the same without the GameCube controller. Like those analog sticks, the analog triggers just felt so good. So yeah, A tier. I feel good.
Yeah. YUNKJunk! Hello, welcome back to Tubby Talk, where the Tubby Robot Ice Cream Factory
guys,
founders, ice cream monkeys, we talk about video games. I'm Steve.
I'm Chris.
And we're here to do what the YouTubers love doing.
What they've been doing. Yeah, this was old 10 years ago, but we're doing it now. We're bringing it back.
We're doing a tier list.
Yeah, cutting edge. It's so cutting edge. There was a website that handles all of this for us. And Dylan just had to go in, drop a couple, like maybe 4 images, and we got this beautiful list.
We're not going to buzz market the website because you already know what it is, because it's 2011 and everybody's doing this.
Yeah. So what are we listing?
We're going to do a tier list of controllers throughout the years.
Years? Controllers have been out for multiple years at this point?
They're older than we are.
Wow. In fact, some of these, one of them is older than we are. The others, not so much. But yeah, I think this will be a fun thing to argue over and see where things go. Right now, we have a tier, goes from S to D.
S for super, D for deficient.
On a scale from super to deficient. I like that. It's good.
Super, adequate, boring, condemned, and deficient.
Yeah. Adequate. I would hope A is a little better than adequate, but sure. I got straight adequates.
I mean, hey, if you went to Catholic school, you got outstanding, satisfactory, and we used to get unsatisfactory.
Oh yeah.
Before
you got O's, right? O was good.
Yeah, O was outstanding. There was S, then U.
Well, I think next time we'll do a tier list, we'll use the Catholic school grading system. I would like that.
I'd use the 80s one.
Yeah.
And then the last one, you get smacked on the hand with a yardstick by none.
Bloody knuckles and a ruler. Yeah, I like that.
Bloody left knuckles specifically.
Yes. So yeah, let's jump in. I think we're going to go with no rhyme or reason. We're just going to do it in the order as presented on this tier list.
Let's do it recorded. Okay, so first up, we have the Switch Joy-Con controller.
All right, so these are fascinating. These are great in their versatility, right? Like these are the controller you use handheld by default. But you take them off, you put them in another useless piece of plastic, holds them in one place, and you got yourself a real controller.
I mean, you could even take them off the Switch, hold them independently in your hands. You've got Wiimotes.
Yeah.
I was going to call them Joy-Cons, which is what they are. You get Wiimotes when you do that.
Yeah, and so they're really versatile. You can play a ton of different games with them. They don't feel great. Like
my sister was playing through Super Mario Wonder. Rubber baby buggy bump. Sorry. And it's hot. And she was playing through it, and she was like, "Oh, I had so much trouble with the timed stages, like the couple of musical stages where you have to time your jumps to the disappearing blocks."
Yes.
She was using the Joy-Con in landscape mode the whole time.
Oh, so she was just in landscape.
First, I was like, it can't be that hard. Like, I'll walk you through it. I played online with her, so I couldn't actually help her through the stage. But she could see my character, so I was showing her when to jump and trying to help time it.
She's using the little tiny joystick.
Little tiny buttons. And I was like, so I got her it was a GameCube style controller.
Okay.
I got it from like Ross or something like that.
Yeah.
It looks cool. It's like a wired GameCube controller for Switch. It plugs into the dock through USB. And it is a GameCube controller for all intents and purposes, but it's like white with Mario's logo on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so she did much better after that. I don't know if she passed that stage yet, but she enjoys playing the game more. But she doesn't have, it's 3 inches long, right? They're not even that big.
Yeah, it's like 3 inches long.
It's like the size of my thumb.
Yep. Well, and that's the thing. Controllers are it's the interface you use to interact with the game world, and they're so important. And a lot of people don't think of that as like part of the system, but it is.
It's the most integral part of the interface.
Right. So I don't know. I would lean towards the Switch Joy-Cons. I'm going to say B tier, personally. Just the thing that saves them is just how versatile they are. You can do so many things with them, play so many different games, and they work in different configurations, but they just don't feel great. I don't know. What do you think on the tier?
I'd put them D tier.
D tier?
Yeah.
So you're saying the worst?
They're deficient. And I mean that literally, because there is a lack of, I even hate to say ergonomics, but there's a lack of an ergonomic factor where it's comfortable to hold the controller. Because you want you want to be able to hold a controller and let it melt into your hands to the point where you don't think about the controller.
Yeah.
You just act with it. And I feel like I've never been able to get comfortable with these controllers, so even in the holder, because they're so.
Do you feel even uncomfortable with these in handheld mode when you're using the Switch?
I don't love it. It makes more sense to me though, because I am holding an actual portable console in my hand. So I'm happy about that part.
I mean, I would argue,
but I'm cognizant of carrying it, so the Joy-Cons aren't that bad.
I would argue in handheld mode, it's one of the better handheld controller options you have.
I haven't tried any other. Like I've never tried like.
You've had a Game Boy and you've had
I like the Game Boy much better.
Oh, wow.
All the Game Boy controls I like much better than.
D is rough though. Like, all right. We split the difference and do a C here. That's what I would do. I mean, I would put it in B because I think it's very inventive and it works.
I'll split the difference and say C.
All right, Dylan. Yeah, we got those in C. Ooh, that one got hard right off the bat, and I mean, it makes sense. They're complicated.
I'm condemning them.
Condemning. Good. And then, weirdly enough, we have the Xbox 360 controller next, right?
Yeah. Now I have a soft spot for that one because that was like my first non-Nintendo made like daily driver controller.
Yeah.
Like I had an Xbox 360, so I used that. I figured out eventually they released a version you can use on your computer, and I used that as my computer controller forever. I really liked how it felt in the hand. I really liked how the buttons felt like they were firm and they had a nice push to them, but they didn't feel like clicky.
Yeah.
The D-pad was terrible.
The D-pad was awful. And
that's like any non-NES D-pad that was terrible, I think.
Some of them are better.
They're all better than this.
Yeah, because this one, I played Super Meat Boy on this 360.
And you tried to use the D-pad.
I tried to use the D-pad, and it was one that I was like, this sucks. I would switch back and forth between the joystick and the D-pad.
You know how much your thumb hurt from trying to use the D-pad. How many things you missed.
A lot of it depends on the level, right? So if the level had a lot of diagonals, I might be more likely to do the joystick. But if it didn't, I might use the D-pad. So I thought that really brought it back. The thing is, I do think it's like the archetype for all modern controllers. Like this was the first one. Every controller now, the pro controllers are this controller, just slightly tweaked. Yeah. So yeah, it's really good. It's just got that, it's a big flaw, but only if you care about games like that. And most of the people playing the 360 probably didn't care about those games.
I don't know, because because of the placement of the D-pad, it was placed down next to the right stick.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were playing,
left stick.
I mean, no, it's placed at the bottom.
Yeah, it's what
adjacent
they call
to the right stick.
Asymmetrical sticks.
Asymmetrical, yeah, because the left joystick was
higher
at the top of the control. Yeah. So yeah, if you cared about any game where you needed directional control with the D-pad, it sucked because you had to change your grip to an efficient grip because you have to stretch your thumb across.
Oh, see, now we're going to get into, so this will influence some of the PlayStation. Do you prefer symmetrical to asymmetrical in general?
I am 110% symmetrical.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I will not buy a controller that is asymmetrical. If it comes with a console or a computer I buy, fine. I will never buy one on purpose.
Wow. So that's going to affect a lot of the ones coming up.
Well, part of it is because I used that for like 8 years of my life it was my main controller, and I hated the D-pad being where the left stick should have been, next to the right stick, so my thumbs can at least do similar motions. And I hated having, the asymmetrical joystick where, like, I would have to consciously think of how I'm holding the controller, especially if I'm using the left and right triggers and buttons.
All right.
It's just different hand configurations. It wasn't comfortable.
Also, these were largely wireless. They used AA's, and I thought the AA is still the best option for a controller. A lot of people really care about whether or not it comes with its own battery, and I prefer it not to have its own battery, because when you need to recharge it, say you get home from a trip and you're like, man, I really want to play a PlayStation 3 game, and you sit down and the battery's dead, you have to wait to charge it.
I mean, I think with 3 you did. Starting with the PlayStation 5, this is spoiler for later in the tier list. Starting with PlayStation 4, I believe you could charge and play at the same time with the standard controller.
Mm-hmm.
They were like special ones for PS3 you had to buy.
Yeah.
If you wanted to plug it in and play with it.
But with the 360 or any of the Xboxes, you can say, pop out the dead batteries, plop in some new charged batteries.
Well, and do you remember if when you played it wireless, if you needed batteries in it or not? I think you.
Yeah.
You did? I thought you didn't need batteries if you plugged it, if you wired it. I always played wired, so I don't even remember.
Yeah. It wouldn't turn on without batteries in it.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, that marks it down a tier to me.
A tier?
Yeah, because there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to plug in a controller, especially at that age, with a wire. It was a chunky wire, too. It wasn't like USB.
Well,
it was a proprietary
The wireless version did not have a wire. There was no port for a wire. Yeah.
So there were two completely separate
They were.
models.
It was the wired version and the wireless version.
Okay, so this looks like the wireless one?
It is. Yeah, the black one was wireless. The white one was inherently wired, but they had different colors of both.
I'm going to focus my thoughts on this wireless one then.
Yeah.
Okay, that changes the game.
Because I was going to say A tier.
Yeah, it changes the game. If it's the wireless one, you get the batteries that are replaceable. That's good. If you don't have any batteries to replace it with, that's bad. That's not a failing of the controller.
No.
I'll leave that up. The placement of the joysticks is unideal. Yeah, it's probably closer to an English word. It's unideal to me, so I wouldn't put it S tier.
Yeah,
I would say A tier though for the Xbox 360.
Yeah, all right. I think we're in agreement then. A tier for the 360. Yeah. All right, I feel okay about that. I use this as the default PC controller for years, up until like 2 years ago for me, and it gets squeaky. I don't know if you have used an old one, but like the triggers get like it's pretty loud now.
You have to clean it. You have to take it apart. You have to oil it.
I have cleaned it, but I have not oiled it. That'll be my next step. So next up, we got the OG, right? I don't know if you ever played this one. This is the Duke.
That is the chunky one. Yeah, I never played it. I've never beheld it.
I have. It is bigger than you think. It's sort of like it's like a football.
It's confusingly large.
Confusingly large. And it always confused me. The original Xbox had a white button and a black button in addition to the face buttons. And they were just off in space on this one. And you know, in theory, like that's great for a 6-button fighting game. But the layout on this is like vertical. So it kind of sucked. These were all wired. They also had like the Dreamcast, you put the memory cards direct
inside the controller.
Yeah. I believe there were 2 slots in every controller.
Yeah, so it was just massive.
Yeah, it was huge. It was so big, they said Japanese people can't use these, and they redesigned it. That's what happened with it.
Which is funny, though, because, again, spoiler alert, the Dreamcast controller was out, like, 6 years before this. And
if that much.
Yeah, and it did very well in Japan. Well, very well for the Dreamcast. But I guess also the Dreamcast one was lighter, I assume.
Yes, Dreamcast was lighter.
I know the Dreamcast was lighter. Sorry, I assume the Duke was heavy.
Yeah, the Duke
for a controller.
It had some heft to it.
Okay.
Yeah, it felt real. So I don't know. This one, it's good. See, I'm saying C, maybe B tier. The thing is, I want to say C tier, but I see those Switch controllers, and I'm like, man, the Joy-Con's better than the Duke. I don't know. What do you think on the tier? You haven't touched this one.
Yeah, I haven't touched it.
So I'm just going to say, what I say, it goes C. It goes C.
You're like, nope, you don't get a say. You know what? I think C, yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I was going to say, I remember you saying you're not super big on like haptics or like force feedback or whatever on the controller.
Oh, I like them. I like it.
Like you like it fine, but you're never like, oh, I want something that like rumbles a lot. I was wondering, do you know if it rumbles a lot or if it's... It seems like it would be a nightmare on your wrists.
It had a fairly strong rumble.
It seems like it would give everybody carpal tunnel. Like for that, I would give it a D if it makes everybody feel bad.
A lot of people like swore by this controller like later on. It got notoriety when it was replaced, when people were like, actually, this felt better than any controller in my... People like talking about their giant hands. It's a thing. Yeah. But yeah, I feel fine with that.
Okay.
But then we move on to a good one.
Now we've got the SNES Controller. Super Nintendo Entertainment System.
I would say the controller which all other controllers sprung forth from. The diamond face on the face buttons. It's just the first shoulder buttons ever in a console. And
arguably the best shoulder buttons.
They felt great. They still feel great. You go back and see, I know this is the nostalgic 41-year-old in me. Like, I'd say this is S tier. It doesn't get a ton. The only thing is, like, modern games, not nearly as versatile, but it wasn't built for that.
What is built for? It's this machine kills Koopa.
Yeah. The D-pad feels like better than any D-pad.
Yeah. I don't want to just like straight up say S tier. I do want to, but I feel like I'm trying to be more objective, which is hard when what I'm going to say objectively is very subjective. I don't like the precedent is started for Nintendo controllers with the A button being on the right face.
And I would counter that.
Being the accept or start button versus the one at the bottom of the face, which is what everybody else uses.
I would counter that by saying the NES did it before this. This is just carrying on B followed by A.
The NES wasn't a diamond, though. I don't know about the...
But it's the same orientation.
Yeah. It's not on the tier list, but the NES Advance pad.
The Advantage.
No, I thought... the Advantage was the joystick, right?
Yeah.
What was the pad called? There was another...
The Max. The NES Max.
The Max didn't have 4 face buttons, right?
No,
it had 2, and then it had like the turbo buttons.
Yeah.
They were like mirror the buttons, but okay. Yeah, so that one, I guess it also technically did. Yeah. So, I still don't like it, but I'll say S tier.
Yeah.
With an asterisk.
I think it's S. I think it's like, it's hard to say not S.
It's very hard to say not S.
Because like, what's wrong? Aside from quibbles with like what came later, what did it do wrong? Nothing. I don't. Maybe start and select are at an angle. That's kind of weird. You don't really hit them.
It's a cool angle, though.
It's a cool angle. Look,
if you're trying to hit them blind, I guess it could be a problem. But how often do you hit start and how often do you hit select in the middle of a game?
Yeah. And
back in the SNES days.
It's beautiful in that like the X and Y buttons were new to us. They were concave. The B and A were convex.
Yeah, so you could tell by feel which buttons you were pressing.
Feel. It's ahead of its time. It just thought of everything.
It's the perfect controller. Double dagger.
Yeah. Then we jump. This is several generations later. We got the PlayStation 4 Dual Sense?
Dual Shock.
It's
still Dual Shock.
Was it Dual?
Yeah. The Dual Sense is the PS5.
Okay.
Specifically.
It's the Dual something.
It's
Dual Shock 4, I think is what they call it.
Dual Shock 4, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Dual Shock series was introduced on the PlayStation 1 as an later add-on controller with 2 analog sticks.
Spoilers.
Yeah. I mean, the tier list is full of spoilers, so I'm just going to barrel straight ahead and not call them out anymore.
So I'm wondering, is this one your preferred? Now it's symmetrical joysticks. Does that make it better than the Xbox 360 in your head?
I would say it doesn't make it better. I used it for a while. I replaced my 360 controller with the Dual Shock 4 when software came out to allow you to use it on a PC.
It was a DS4 Win.
DS4 Win. Thank you. Yeah, it was a plug-in DLL you could swap in, and it would allow you to plug that in through via USB, and it would map it as if it was an Xbox controller. So everything used the X input procedure protocol. Yeah, X input method.
Yeah, the framework
controller. Yeah. But yeah, so like I used it for a while. I liked it okay. I didn't like it better than the Xbox 360 controller overall. I like the symmetrical joysticks better though, which is why I switched.
See, and this one I did like. The Dual Shock is basically unchanged through here. Like the layout's the same, the buttons are identical. There's subtle differences. And in this one, the big difference was that it has a trackpad with a big button behind it. Yeah. Also, the joysticks themselves, the texture on them has a little bit of a concave dip in the middle, as opposed to the mushroom heads that were on the previous ones, which I do feel it made them a lot nicer.
Yeah. The convex ones on like the old one, my fingers would just slip off all the time.
Yeah. And they space them further apart because we'll get to it. But the PlayStation 3, you could hit your thumbs together on those joysticks. So this was nice. And it was great as a PC controller because you could map that whole touchpad as a mouse.
Yeah.
So you could use the mouse.
Slide your finger across it and tap.
Click.
Yeah, double click.
It was good. There wasn't a ton wrong with it. The only thing I would say might be wrong with is the battery life was kind of bad compared to the other ones.
You could definitely charge and play with this though, because I did it on the PS4 console itself, and because I never played wireless with it because I was always
I always played
within
wired.
10 feet of the TV, so I just played wired.
I always played wired too, which I feel like we're probably outliers in that.
Yeah. Well, I didn't necessarily do it for any kind of like anti-wireless bias. I know there's like, especially older controllers used to introduce like lag or delay.
Yeah.
The wire doesn't bother me, so I'm like, why do I need it to not have a wire? It doesn't bother me.
So what are you saying here? I'm thinking A.
I'm thinking A.
Yeah. All right. Dual Shock 4 A tier. I feel good about that. It's a good controller. We'll get into it more, but I do think PlayStation's ongoing face button symbols are stupid. We'll get there. We'll go to the OG for that. Now we're up to the Sega Saturn. I only use this some.
I used it a couple times.
I mean, neither of us owned a Saturn. We borrowed our friend non-Saturn, perhaps.
Like, we both played Panzer Dragoon Saga, I assume, is why we used it.
Yep.
I liked it pretty well. I loved the 6-button Genesis controller. So it was an evolution of that with shoulder buttons.
Yeah.
So I was all about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it felt good. How do you feel about the D-pad? The D-pad, like Genesis D-pads in
Genesis
general.
D-pad, I've always liked okay. It was always inferior to the Nintendo D-pad.
Yeah.
But that's because everything's inferior to the Nintendo D-pad.
But this had shoulder buttons, and the shoulder buttons felt pretty good.
Like the problem that I had with this D-pad is the same one I had with the Genesis one, is playing like Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat, you needed diagonals. It was offset a bit. It wasn't flush true north to the rest of the controller.
Yeah.
So you always had to adjust mentally and physically for that slight left like tilt.
And I feel
that annoyed me.
That's strange because these 6-button controllers, I feel like they were designed with fighting games in mind.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's why it was so weird. Like it must have been a manufacturing quirk because of they were like crescent shaped. So maybe they were like, oh, if you put it straight up and down, then it changes your grip too much and makes it uncomfortable.
Here's a question. When you were playing, if you were to play a fighting game on these, would you use 3 fingers on it like an arcade pad, or did you just go big thumb?
Oh no, big thumb.
Big thumb.
Yeah. I'd like, we'll get into this. I guess we could have gotten into it with the Xbox one, but yeah, claw grip.
Yeah.
Or any other variant grip. I hate them. I only use them when necessary. Like if I physically can't press a button, like in Elden Ring, if I'm running using like a PS4 or PS5 controller, the way I have all the buttons mapped, I have to hold run with my thumb and then rotate my wrist to press like pick up items as I'm running.
Yeah.
Which is very uncomfortable. Yeah. But that's the only way I can still attack while also running and picking things up.
It's interesting though. This was ostensibly a 3D system. The Sega's first predominantly 3D system. It doesn't have anything on it.
Yeah, it's a 2D controls.
It's a 2D controller in a 3D world, right?
It's kind of left behind a bit.
Yeah.
By the technology.
But at the same time, like the Saturn was a 2D powerhouse at the time. Like that's what it was really good at.
All the best CPS2 fighting games were on or ported most faithfully to Saturn.
Tough to say, like A or B?
I would definitely say B. I wouldn't say A.
B? Okay.
Because again, the D-pad being off center and also kind of like octagonal.
Yeah.
Combined just made it. I always missed or dropped inputs and had to like stop, take a breath, and like rotate my wrist to make sure I was aligned with it like every couple minutes.
All right, we got our first B. I feel good about that. And then we move on to the original Genesis 3-button. So this is great coming on the heels of that one because it's very similar. No shoulder buttons, just those 3 face buttons.
A, B, C in a row.
I always thought
this control scheme.
Yeah, like if you needed to use the C button much, like I feel you can't access the A button. Like you gotta switch your thumb position.
Yeah, why wouldn't they make it a triangle?
Right.
You would think if you're only gonna have 3 buttons, but at the same time, I don't know. I'm thinking back to playing it. There weren't too many games where I had to press like the C button a lot, or the C button was like a special attack button, and A and B were like jumping standard attack or something like that.
It seems like they just put a C on there to be like, one more than the NES. Got it.
Sega does what Nintendo don't.
We got 3 buttons. And I do think the start being up there was kind of a neat place to put it.
Like above the main row?
Yeah.
The buttons themselves were really good. They were like bigger. They were big, wide buttons, concave, and they had a real satisfying click. But especially as a kid, like my whole thumb fit inside of the buttons. So I was never at danger of like pressing a button by mistake because I'm like, my finger's not in the button, so I can't press it. That D-pad was also slightly off kilter, I believe.
Yeah.
So I had the same problem as the Saturn one. I liked it a lot though. I mean, I personally would put it in A. Mostly because of the D-pad. I would want to put it in S, but the D-pad gives me.
So you like
fits.
this better than the Saturn?
Oh yeah. The original 3-button Genesis I liked a lot better than the Saturn.
Okay. See, I would look at that. Knock it down
nice
for
big
like
buttons, like
unoriginality, because it's very obviously, hey, an NES, throw another button on it. But it does have like the grips, which is something. It might have been the first one shaped like that, and it's kind of become the standard to have.
I think
that
it was, yeah,
the quasi boomerang shape.
Yeah. I also have a lot of fond memories. I'm trying to disconnect the memories of the games I played on my Genesis from the actual experience of using the controller. So yeah, I would probably say A though.
All right. Yeah, I would go B, but we'll do A. Yeah.
I mean, I'll compromise with a B because, like you said, the Saturn's in a B.
Yeah. And I feel like for their applications, they are big.
For someone who does not have very fond memories of it, they're basically the same thing. Saturn just has more buttons.
Yeah.
But I feel like the quality of the buttons was different enough that I hold the Genesis a little higher regard. But I'd say B is fine for that.
All right, let's do B. Genesis 3-button B.
You can put it with its younger brother.
All right. Now we're moving on to some of spicy stuff. The Wii U Gamepad, which arguably crushed the system. I think this is one of the most comfortable controllers ever made.
I'm like S tier.
Yeah, I'm thinking S tier too.
Like S-tier.
I can't believe you're on the same wavelength. But so very maligned. Everyone just talks crap about this.
It almost killed Nintendo, but it was so great.
It felt great. It did so much.
Especially after, again, spoiler alert, after the Wiimotes, which I will just say were not S tier for me.
Yeah.
I'll say that as of now.
No.
Yeah. After that, I was like, this is a return to form.
Yeah.
The buttons felt amazing. They felt better than the SNES buttons. I was like, these just feel like the perfect buttons.
It had your symmetrical joysticks.
Special joysticks at the bottom. That was a big, chunky, heavy thing.
Yeah.
Again, with like with the Switch, that's fine. Because holding it, if I'm reminded I'm holding a controller to play this giant thing because there's a screen on it.
It felt molded to your hands.
Yeah. It even had the grips on the back had like raised hills.
Yeah.
Like finger rests. So your fingers will rest on it naturally.
The D-pad was great. The joysticks felt great.
Everything about it was great.
It was. I'm so glad we're on the same page on this.
Even
one.
the motion controls, like to me, like I'm like, if I'm doing a motion control, I don't want independent arms or any which way. It's a rigid. It's like a steering column versus having like a throttle and a joystick. Like I
believe that this controller with Splatoon kind of brought around modern FPS controls. Because it introduced that motion control as for fine tune, right?
For fine tune,
you still use the right stick for the gross movement, but the fine tuning, like with Splatoon, people are like, wait, we can do this on a controller, and now everyone does it.
And you do like power slide, like Splatoon specifically, but even in other games, like you could do like a power slide type move where you're moving one way, looking a different way, shooting a third way.
Yeah.
Like it was revolutionary. It's before its time, maybe after its time. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, S tier.
Oh my God.
Unqualified.
And even that doesn't even mention that it's got a stylus in it with a touchscreen. And for the games that used it, it was great. Super Mario Maker 1.
Yeah. You could just draw your terrain.
You draw the terrain and then you have the D-pad right there. You just jump right back into it.
It was perfect.
It was, yes. I got a high five on that. All right.
The only thing that could have made it any better would be if it was a good wireless controller. It wasn't wireless at all. If it could have made wireless and without latency, that would have been perfect.
It was wireless entirely.
Was it?
Yes. The only issue was the battery only lasted like 2 or 3 hours.
Okay. So it's kind of switched to me always plugging it in.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, never mind. I'd take that back. It's still S tier because it was wireless. And it had to be wireless. I presume I always had it wired because I was 6 feet from the.
Yeah. The controller that most people thought that sunk an entire Nintendo generation, S tier.
Well, see, to me, what it is, and the same thing I thought at the time, a lot of people, including some old people, I know we're getting there.
Yeah.
Old people were like, oh, I like this. I never liked the video game gamepad. I like this weird Wiimote thing.
Yeah.
And then Nintendo went back to well, not solely, you can still use the Wiimotes, but a lot of games only use the gamepad.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people that bought the Wii were like, I didn't like this, which is why I didn't buy the SNES or the N64.
Yeah.
So I think that had much more to do with their decline. Like, not that they like dropped in quality, but just the sales dropped because their sales were so exponentially high. Like such an outlying sales of the Wii meant that the Wii was going to do worse by comparison. regardless of what happens.
So we're on the same page there. This brings us to the PlayStation 1 Dual Shock. The original Dual Shock, which was the first controller revision for the PS1.
I would give this C tier.
C tier. So you didn't like this at all.
The concave joysticks, and they were like this like rough textured plastic. So it not only hurt my fingers, but if I was trying to hold on to the joysticks with my fingers, they would get scuffed up and rough, and my thumbs would be sore after I used it.
Yeah, I felt the same way about the D-pad on these. Like when it first came out, the PlayStation D-pad being unconnected, I thought was an abomination. And you kind of get used to it, and it's really good for some distinct inputs. Like Tony Hawk, it is one of the best.
Yeah, it's only because Tony Hawk worked for PS.
Yeah. So like I think it's a better controller for Tony Hawk than Nintendo controllers.
But playing like a platformer, anything where you have to switch from vertical or a fighting game, where to switch from horizontal or vertical to diagonal, it sucked.
Yeah. See, I feel like that's a little harsh on it because it has the dual tiered shoulder buttons, which was
L1 and L2.
An innovation, even though it's just like let's throw more on it. But that's stuck around. We still have that.
They weren't analog though. The trigger, the L2 and R2 buttons
Not
were
until
digital at that point.
The next one. The weird thing about this is it had a button for digital between the analog sticks, and what that did was you could turn it on to read the left analog stick as a D-pad, basically for legacy games.
Oh,
because remember, this came out at a time when there were lots of PS1 games already out that did not have any idea of what analog was. But yeah, it was kind of like a mid-gen refresh. Not all the games supported it.
So one of the other reasons I argue for it to be in D tier, besides the fact I just really dislike it, is that there's a lot of PlayStation controllers.
Yeah.
They're not all equal.
They're also similar, though.
They're similar, but not equal. And I feel like I am not going to list them on my personal tier list. I don't think any of them at the same tier.
See,
like at least not. No, maybe one. Like two will share a tier. The rest of them are all wildly different tiers for me.
Well, we'll get into it in just a couple. I don't know. I think C for this one.
C?
Yeah. Because it's kind of the archetype from which all PlayStation controllers sprang going forward.
I'll acquiesce to C.
Okay.
For now. I might want to revisit that one at the end and see if I can't change your mind.
All right. So DualShock 1C. Yeah, we can move these around later. Well, now we come up on the next, I guess it's just a contemporaneous controller. It's the Pro Controller for the Switch.
I love the Pro Controller.
Pro Controller's great.
Ergonomic wise, it always feels comfortable in my hand. I always forget I'm using it, except for when I need to enter or exit a menu and the buttons are backwards
and B&A,
in my mind. The battery life is amazing on this. Like I don't think I've plugged mine in months, and I'll use it for like a couple hours a week.
Yeah,
I haven't charged it in months. It's been at least since March.
Yeah.
It's just great that it can hold up so well. The joysticks are starting to drift a bit though.
See, we didn't even talk about that with the Joy-Cons, which is a bigger problem with. You have drift on the Pro.
Yeah, I don't have drift on the Joy-Cons because I got a Pro at the same time as I got my Switch.
I'm not using these anymore.
I only use the Joy-Cons when I'm using it in handheld mode.
Yeah.
Especially because they suck. So yeah, I don't have drift yet, thankfully. But yeah, the Pro Controller got a little bit of drift. Some of the buttons being inset in the face, like the share and
the plus minus
and minus button, are annoying to me because I always have to hunt for them.
Yeah,
they're not like I can't just like point my thumb towards their direction and find them on field.
Yeah, I'm down with that. I think it feels great. I think it does everything you want a modern controller to do. It's got the gyro built in, really good force feedback. Like it does that. It takes USB-C to charge, which is awesome, which is the standard. Nintendo doesn't usually do those things, so it's nice.
Yeah.
The D-pad's performance is subpar.
Is it like laggy, or do you have to like have too much travel for what you need the D-pad for?
So the feel is fine, but it registers false diagonals a lot.
Wow.
So I had trouble with this playing games like Celeste. Celeste, you need really, like, you want that Tony Hawk level of left, right, or diagonal. And it wasn't great for that. I found myself played Celeste with the Joy-Cons because it had the independent buttons.
Oh.
So I used the dual Joy-Con. So that's and it's not what you expect Nintendo to get wrong. Yeah. Nintendo's all about the 2D platforms. They invented them.
The D-pad.
Right.
In fact, legal battles over this.
So like, that was a disappointment to me. Like the fact that I'm playing a game like that, it doesn't work well. But still, it's a great controller. I'm feeling A personally. What are you, S or A on this?
I'm A. I was thinking between A and B.
Okay,
I'm A. I think it's a solid.
Let's do A. Right. And that brings us to the original PlayStation 1 controller, which is basically the same, but does not have analog sticks.
That one's like A for me, I think.
Whoa! So you take away the joysticks and it jumps up 4 tiers for you?
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like the PlayStation controller, when it came out, it was like, okay, it has the 4 face buttons of the SNES controller.
Yeah.
It's got an inferior D-pad, but D-pad of the SNES controller. It's got shoulder buttons, which it's got 2 more than SNES.
Yeah, that's the only thing that's different from the SNES.
But I'm just like, it opened up a whole new world of gaming to me, especially like a racing game where I can have handbrakes and brake and accelerate at my fingertips. Like,
yeah,
I loved it. Like, just the fact that PlayStation games had handbrakes. There were a lot of handbrake games on like Super Nintendo before that. Like Mario Kart, you would do like a jump drift.
Yeah.
To emulate a handbrake, but you didn't have a handbrake.
You could
button.
do a handbrake with the triangle button or something. Like, I think that's how I did it on Driver.
I thought that was the actual brake.
No, then you would usually the brake would be square. Okay. And some of the games I played.
What do you mean, Driver, the video game?
Yeah, Driver the video game.
You ain't no driving cat.
This cat's got gasoline in his veins.
That game was great.
Yes.
There was a movie made out of that, I believe, and it was not. I think I watched it. I can't remember it, so it must not have been good.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
It doesn't exist. It's a fever dream.
Fever dream.
Anyway, I did play Driver with the PlayStation controller, and I enjoyed it. The only thing I did not enjoy about the controller is it was very light.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, being so light would mean that I would, like, sometimes like in the heat of the moment, it would fall out of my hand.
So I would say with this, let's acknowledge this is a ripoff of the Super Nintendo controller, right?
100%, yeah.
100%.
Like you said with this Genesis controller, it was Super Nintendo with 2 more buttons.
Yeah.
And some handles.
Yeah. Same everything.
But I feel like, so that's why I'm like, yeah, it's not S tier, not necessarily A tier, but I'm like, the handles made it feel
so the handles changed the game a bit.
Yeah, and the fact that the buttons did feel really good. Having stupid symbols on it was dumb.
Now, I always felt that the handles, when I first put my hand on this, that they were going the wrong direction. I felt like the handles should come forward, and then that's more natural grip to me because that's how I would hold it. You get used to it over time, and this kind of how gaming has gone. But I do feel like you hold those, it's a little bit... I was like, also at the time I was a Nintendo fanboy, kind of like Terry, and he's like, I'm not touching that Sony thing. But I'm willing to go, I would say B tier for this, personally.
Okay, yeah, I'll say B.
Yeah.
I forget what they even said initially. Did I say A?
Yeah, you said A.
I was coming in a little hyperbolic just because I was like, it's much higher than the Dual Shock for the
I love
Dual
that
Shock
we have
1.
it higher than the Dual Shock. Like, that's amazing.
I hated the Dual Shock 1 so much. So I'm like, I'd like it much better than that. So I wanted it to be 2 tiers higher. That's why I wanted it in D.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, it should be at the bottom of the trash heap.
Well, now I'm really curious to see. We're going to have the Dual Shock 2. What they
That's
call
the next one? Yeah.
No, Dual Shock 3. I'm sorry.
That's the 3.
Well, it's either, so we don't know if this is the 6-axis or the Dual Shock 3. So they were both controllers for the PlayStation 3. And if you remember correctly, the original PlayStation 3 controller was the 6-axis, and it did not have force feedback. And it was a big point of contention. And then they're like, all right, we made the Dual Shock 3 now.
Yeah, it's weird to make because the 6-axis was a gyroscopic joystick without haptic feedback.
Yeah.
What's the point of aiming in the third dimension if you don't have any feedback as to what you're aiming at?
I'm completely wrong.
But that was wired, so I'm assuming that's
this
PS2.
is the PlayStation 2 controller.
Yeah,
this is the Dual Shock 2. One of the neat things about this controller that very few people used, every button was pressure sensitive. Each button on it, face buttons and all, had 256 degrees of sensitivity.
Oh, nice.
So, like, the Metal Gear games use this mostly for funny stuff.
Mm-hmm.
A couple Sony games did it, but there wasn't much.
Like most first party, like, bells and whistles they add to the consoles, like,
yeah.
Not a lot of people take advantage of them until after the system's old and it's been like years of developing and they get comfortable.
See, for some reason, I did like this more than the DualShock 1.
Yeah, I'm same.
But they're the same. Look at them.
They're not the same.
One's black.
One of them feels like it's made out of like Play-Doh that you hardened in a kiln.
That feels
The other one feels like it was produced in a factory.
Does feel better. But it's got the mushroom tops. It still felt
it still
all
has
right,
the mushroom
though.
tops. That still annoyed me. But yeah, I would also give the PS2 C tier, maybe B.
Yeah, I'd go higher. I'd say at least B. Yeah. It was good. This is what What do you think? B?
Compared to the PS4 controller, I don't think it's a tier below. So I feel like just based on that, I feel like it's closer to C. I feel like it's more than one tier below. But then again,
they're the same.
Build quality was still so much worse.
Yeah.
B. I'm fine with B.
B. We're saying B for that one. It's amazing how much opinion we have about these identical controllers.
That neither of us used very much.
Right. All right. So here's a weird one. We move on to the GameCube.
GameCube controller.
The GameCube, I think, might be the most comfortable controller ever made. It feels great. Not to say that it is the most functional.
Not usable, just comfortable.
Comfortable. I love it. They broke from the diamond format that they invented. They're like, this is going to be this big old green A button in the middle, and everything else is peripheral.
There's going to be a stick to control your camera, which is the C stick.
Yeah.
Just to control a camera.
Yes.
I think 1 or 2 games used it as like a right stick analog.
Okay, yeah. I see. There were some first-person shooters that did it. I didn't play a ton of first-person shooters on the GameCube. Like they were all ports, right?
Yeah. Well, except for like Metroid Prime.
Yeah. The triggers, the analog triggers, this felt awesome. It was one of those triggers where you pull them back and then there's a click at the very end.
Yeah, but you still get feedback before then. Like it was a true analog controller on the button, but then the click is just like you're at the end of the track. You've given 100% force. I like them. I didn't. It's a blessing and curse how much travel they had. Because it made them very responsive, gave them a lot of character, but also it meant if you needed to press to the click, it was an ordeal compared to other controls.
Yeah. But a lot of the games weren't designed to need that. Like this was great, I felt, for racing games like your Mario Karts of the world.
If you're trying to like feather the engine or something, you can because it's that responsive.
Yes.
But at the same time, and then they had the one Z button.
Yeah, the one on front, on the right side, and there's no corresponding left side button.
It was very funky.
Very funky.
Because it was so funky and daring, I think I'd put it in A tier.
I would also put it in A tier. So yeah.
I wouldn't say it's perfect because those quirks also made it horrible for certain types of games, especially the floating D-pad. This is floating at the bottom out in space.
The D-pad wasn't great.
I didn't love that.
No.
But I also didn't play many games on GameCube that I needed the D-pad for anything but like menus.
Yeah, and I felt like a lot of the games, like so many Nintendo games, they were developed with the controller in mind. Yeah. And when they clicked, they really clicked.
Like Wind Waker, I think I remember it using the D-pad for like inventory or something, right? Like
no,
it didn't have a dedicated function.
It used the C stick for using the Wind Waker wand itself, which felt great. Yeah. That was cool. And it worked really well in games like Luigi's Mansion, where you could control the suction. And if you pressed it down all the way, he'd stop. And it was really good. Smash Brothers. It is still, for most pros, the quintessential Smash Brothers controller.
Yeah, it was designed Smash Brothers was designed to take advantage of other capabilities.
And games like F-Zero, GX, I can't imagine playing with a different controller, to be honest.
I mean, I wish I could, because that would mean they re-released it somewhere.
Yeah, but I feel like I would play it, and then I'd be like, it's not the same without the GameCube controller. Like those analog sticks, the analog triggers just felt so good. So yeah, A tier. I feel good. Yeah. All right. Moving on to one of the older ones, the NES. What do we call it? What did the Control Pad? I think they might have called it
the Control Pad.
It is truly what all other controllers sprang from. D-pad on the left, face buttons on the right. They invented that.
Was it what do you call it in biology? Like the earliest known ancestor or something like that?
Yeah, progenitor. The progenitor controller.
Yeah, because it wasn't the first, but it was the one, like you said, all others. Modern one sprang.
Yeah, and before this, they were all trying to mimic weird arcade joysticks.
There's one we forgot to add to the list. We can decide if we want to add it later or not. You just reminded me.
Yeah.
I won't mention it in case we don't bother. It's the Atari.
Yeah. The NES felt good. It's still, the D-pad still feels great.
It feels good. It cut the hell out of my hands. Yeah. The corners of the controller and the sharp edges of the concave buttons.
And I feel like you weren't really cognizant of this until you got something better later. Like, I definitely felt like aches, but then when you felt something like the Genesis or the Super Nintendo later, you're like, oh.
Dig into my hand.
It doesn't. It's like somebody removed a collar.
Yeah, like it's like when you got old enough to pick out your own clothing or your own sneakers or shoes and you put them on and like, they don't pinch my feet.
Yeah.
This shirt doesn't choke me when I turn around because it's got this high collar. Like, I actually like how this fits. I'm going to say B. I'm going to say C.
C. Okay.
Because it is what everything sprang forth from. It's also not a good controller objectively.
All right.
It was the best at the time for what we had, what we needed it for.
Burns me to put it that low, but
if the SNES controller was out for the NES, nobody would ever touch the NES Control Pad again.
Yeah, it's C tier. C tier NES. Oh, it's down there with the Duke.
Again, I do love it. I've got love in my heart for it, but if any of these other things were around, you wouldn't give it a second glance.
No. All right. N64, another weird one. This one I found out we all played differently because you had your hands always on the outer
I had my hands on the 10 and 2s, and then I would stretch my thumb across to hit the.
You and Terry both. That's what blew my mind. It's like, oh, Steve's a weirdo. Of course he does it like that. But then Terry was like, oh,
no, there were a lot of people that used it that way.
And I was just like, how did you hit the Z button? And
I used my index finger because both my hands were stretched across it.
So your hand must have hurt at all times. Didn't feel great.
No, I don't have tiny hands, but I don't have giant hands either. But no, they hit the Z button.
I feel like
I wasn't playing too many games. I had to jam on the Z button that much that it was like, oh my God, it hurts.
I feel like history's been less kind to this controller. Like as time goes on, we're like, yeah, it had a lot of problems.
Yeah,
it important. Like it's the first game. It's the first controller with an analog stick, and it worked fantastically for the games. It was, I don't know, man. Though I'd have trouble putting it above C.
Yeah, the same reason I gave for the NES controller. Like. For what it did and what it brought to the controller world, it was great.
Yeah.
It should be respected. Or it should be revered.
I don't want to use it.
Yeah, I don't know. I would never use it in lieu of something else.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's deficient.
The one thing I think I still would want to play Mario 64 with that more than any controller. Because they were like built hand in hand together. But yeah. C. Ooh, C.
Okay. So let me ask you then. If you held the middle joystick to use the analog, how did you press the D-pad?
Nothing used the D-pad, so I never had to.
D-pad?
Like, what game did you use a D-pad on? Tell me truthfully.
I don't know, but I can't remember because it's been years. But
nothing used it.
There was nothing that used it?
So, a couple things. There's Mischief Makers, which was a 2D side-scroller. Pokemon Puzzle League, the Dr. Mario port, some of those games.
Okay,
but like, the
Dr.
big
Mario
ones that
things
you
only
played,
one I used, yeah. Wait, so how'd you hit the L button then if you're holding it in the middle?
You don't use it. That's the Z button's for. Nothing used it. It was a whole other configuration just for 2D games.
64?
No, not at all. It's not mapped.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, maybe that my way was and Terry's way was the wrong way then.
I mean, I was going by the way that Nintendo Power told me.
You listen to this.
I know. I'm a bootlicker of Nintendo Power for sure.
And then, now we have the Sega Dreamcast controller.
Yeah.
Which is as big physically, like dimension-wise maybe as the Duke, with a third of the weight.
Yeah, it was very light.
Even with it had 2 slots for memory cards, and the VMU memory cards for the Dreamcast were chunky.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, if you ever saw like a Tamagotchi, they were about that size.
Yep.
Or maybe nowadays, like a good sized pocket bottle of hand sanitizer. They were like that size.
So I have tons of fond memories playing games with this. We played lots of great multiplayer games.
Power Stone 2.
And the rest. Marvel vs. Capcom 2, we played the most on this.
Cannon Spike.
Yeah. But I also remember it hurting my thumbs a lot.
Yeah, the joystick was smooth plastic with like sharp edges and lots of little like rivet style nibs.
So was the D-pad. The D-pad was like sharp edges on that thing, and it was one of those ones where it stuck up.
So it was sharpish edges, but it was also like it felt soft. It was like soft touch plastic. But yeah, you press it down and you just hit like it's like hitting bedrock.
But then the cord comes out of the bottom, so F tier. Why would you do that?
I think the cord coming out the bottom makes it better because it prevents it from having the stress from the top, like pulling on it. And because if you hold a controller with your like this with your thumbs down, it causes carpal tunnel issue and like other wrist issues, thumb issues. So you want to hold your controller upright. The cord coming out the bottom, I'm pretty sure, I don't know this, I'm talking out my ass, but I'm pretty sure this is part of it, is helped ergonomically balance it.
Okay.
So you had it face up.
It did have a built-in clip in the back of the controller that you could snap the cord into, so it was effectively coming out the top again.
It's coming out the back, but yeah. Effectively coming out, I'll acquiesce, but yeah, so that way you don't trip on it.
Yeah. So I love this controller. The VMU's great. Like, it's a really neat idea.
The Rumble Pack, too, that it was sold separately kind of sucked, but you put it in one of the VMU slots and it gave you force feedback.
I can't put it above C, though. I don't know. Where would you put this?
I would put it B.
B?
Yeah.
Just like, all right, if you were someone's like, you're going to play a video game, here's a ranking of controllers, you would pick that over anything in C.
What game are we playing?
Yo, virtual fishing. Like, yeah, sure.
Virtual Fission?
Fishing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's a Sega game.
Yeah, I know. That's fine.
I would assume I thought you were going to name like a Nintendo game.
Obviously.
It also had an attachment that went to the VMU slot that was a microphone, so you could talk to a virtual fish called Seaman.
Yes.
No.
I'll go B. Like, the memories alone, it's just like...
At the very least, I would put it in B so it can be with its older siblings from Sega.
Okay. Put it with his friends.
The 3 controllers they ever made. I liked it a lot. I like the buttons.
Mm-hmm.
I like the feel of it. It was like, it felt like a toy, but in a good way.
I agree. It felt great. It was fun to play with. I just couldn't play it for too long.
There were also different colors for the faceplate, a la the iMac. I don't know which one came first. I think the iMac was first with the pastel.
That's a good question.
Colors. But that plastic felt different than the standard plastic.
Yeah.
So that one I would put in C. The ones with the colored plastic I would put in a B.
Okay.
If I had to like split hairs.
Well, we move on to the Wii Remote and Nunchuck.
I personally think they're D tier.
D tier.
I would like to hear what you think, what you feel. And they don't have to be anywhere near D at the end. But I feel personally they're D tier. I hate them. I've explained a little bit earlier, like in passing, just like they were very disconnected from each other, and therefore they felt disconnected from me.
Yeah.
And I'm fighting these controls, except for the games they were designed for. They worked great.
See,
but I didn't always want to play games they were designed.
I can't argue against that in terms of it is versatile. You can play almost any game with this.
Whether you want to is the issue.
I did kind of like that the Wii Remote itself could be flipped on the side and be an NES controller, like for virtual. It didn't feel amazing. It worked though. The D-pad's actually pretty good on the Wii. I'm gonna say that. Like the D-pad's great.
But like the fact that you had the one stick was basically a D-pad at the top, start select in the middle, I think, and then it had buttons at the bottom. Still. The one that and then they had a button on the back, like the Z button, I think was on the back, or was that
they were on the top?
They were on top.
Mm-hmm.
And it had an infrared.
Didn't actually have.
They didn't have infrared on those.
No. You mean the?
I thought one of
classic controller attachment for this.
No, I thought one of the sides had infrared. Sensor on top.
The Wii Remote had an infrared sensor, and that's actually where I'm going to counter. It's better than D because that infrared sensor was really good and still unmatched. And for navigating menus, which I know isn't gameplay, it felt amazing. It felt like God's controller. Like you're just like, oh, I'm pointing things and dragging them on the TV. That's awesome. Games that utilize that were wonderful.
Wait, but then you had the other side of the controller.
Yeah.
Which you attach with a cord into the first controller, and you had basically a presenter that as if you would have, at like
next slide.
A college professor would have, next slide, but it's an analog joystick instead of a clicker.
Yep.
And it has a Z button on the back trigger, which was very unergonomic. Like my wrist hurt picking it up the first time, and every time I tried to use it, my wrist hurt after using it.
Yeah.
And they had to sell like gel covers for these controllers because people would frequently throw them across the room.
Yeah, well, that's mostly just because people didn't know what motion control was, and they just go flinging around. It was new.
It has straps built in, so you strap them to your wrists.
I would argue that this is still the only controller you should use to play Mario Galaxy and Mario Galaxy 2.
Well, because it was designed for those as well.
But pointing with the IR remote and moving Mario around, it was great. But yeah, it felt jank. So you're saying D?
It felt jank, and it's very, very personal, very quibbling, but backwards. Because the analog stick was on the right side. One.
Well, you could just swap your hands.
Yeah, but the controls weren't designed for you to swap your hands.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't care.
Yes?
No, yeah, it's ambidextrous in that way. It was great.
But like the D-pad needs to be on my left hand because that's what I've always used a D-pad with my left thumb.
Yeah, but usually in a game like that, you weren't actually using the D-pad as a pointing device.
Yeah, that's too many steps.
It had a lot of options. It was not perfect. Yeah, I want to say C, but I can go D.
Okay, put it this way. If it wasn't in D, what would you, of that we've already talked about, would you move to D out of C?
I would move down. Shoo, that's a good question. So you're saying it's worse than the Joy-Cons?
Yeah, I think the Joy-Cons eat its lunch. Because the Joy-Cons do the same thing with the IR scanner at the top.
Yeah, but the IR scanner's not at the top, it's at the bottom. That's the problem. And there isn't a sensor bar on the TV.
Well, that's just because they thought they didn't need a sensor bar because it wasn't a main feature.
Yeah, but the sensor bar was good. It is.
You could attach a sensor bar to the Switch, though, I thought.
No.
I thought I'm pretty sure I did it. I bought one that was an attachment or something.
It was the Wii U. Yeah.
Wii U. Okay.
Yeah. We can go D. We'll put it in D. It was inventive.
It was very inventive.
Yeah, like they definitely didn't copy anyone when they did this one.
D is the worst of the options we have listed.
Yeah.
It's deficient in something enough to be irredeemable from, I forget what I said, C was condemnable.
Yeah.
It was lacking. It was not lacking in certain ways, the ways that made it shine.
Right.
But that was only for Wii games that use the Wiimotes to their fullest.
Right.
There were lots of third-party games which barely use them at all. And it was basically just like, we have to use these controllers, so the control just sucks.
All right.
Like Tatsunoko versus Capcom. I know you played that.
Yeah. It wasn't great with it.
I wouldn't think so. Like,
well, before I throw up in my mouth, we're going to move on. We're going to go to this is the PS3, so either the dual 6-axis or the dual
let's assume it's a 6-axis.
Okay.
They look the same. I don't know what the difference would be.
I would put this a tier below the PS2 controller.
Yeah, no,
C,
I'm like, this is C or D.
which is funny because
the 6-axis controller sucked for usability.
It is one of the few controllers where I felt using the joysticks, my thumbs would bump.
Yeah.
And I hated that feeling. Like you're playing a game, there's something about your thumbs bumping, it ain't right. Well, it's something unholy.
If you're playing like any kind of game, and again, like I said earlier, you're expected to aim or rotate or use a gyroscopic function for anything with no feedback, but what you're looking at on screen, it better be a really damn good engineered controller, which the Wii U Gamepad was.
All right.
That was not. I would say this is also D.
D. I'll put D. Yeah, D. Take that. Oh, I feel better now.
Although I like how you put this identical controller in D and the other ones you put up higher.
No, there we go. Yeah, look at the spread. From A, B, C, and D, we have basically the same controller.
I would swap Dual Shock 1 with 6-axis. Because I wanted it in D anyway, because I was like,
yeah.
But 6-axis it's built better than that, almost certainly. But what it's built to do,
it also had bad battery life, and it took away the stupid, useless, sensitive face buttons. They were stupid and useless, but they were there.
And again, it was so bad they had to replace it with.
It felt too light. It's one of the few controllers that felt too light.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's deficient in all ways.
So now we move. This is the Xbox OG Revision S controller,
which I hadn't realized was a thing.
Yeah. Most people consider this an improvement over the Duke. I would tend to agree. I would say this might be a B tier.
B tier. I'll give it a B tier.
Yeah, it's not a whole lot to say about it. It's wired. It's
better than this big ugly Duke. It's fine.
B for better. There we go. All right, now we got the Xbox One controller. So
I've heard really good things about this. I've not used one personally. No, I'd used one for a minute.
Yeah. It's great. It's actually a really good controller.
It feels good, feels solid. It's not too heavy.
Pretty good.
Really?
Yeah, it's actually pretty good. They heard all the complaints from the 360. They addressed them. It's clicky. It's more like a Game Boy Advance SP joystick, like that with a D-pad, but I kind of like that style. It's really, man.
Like, I don't like the shape for holding, which is one of the main reasons when I was playing it, I was like, it feels, it's not weighted the way I want it to be. But probably because I use Dual Sense, the Dual Sense for PS5 all the time.
Yeah.
I got used to that weight.
So this one, I would say S or A personally. Like I think about it, there's not really anything wrong with it.
I haven't used it enough, so I'll leave it up to you. If you think it's better than the 360 controller, then by all means, we can put it in S.
It's better than all right, S tier. Xbox One getting its due. Look at our motley crew up there. We got the Wii U and the Xbox One, everyone's favorites. Woo! There's something to be said about this list. All right, so here's one I don't think any of you have touched. This is the ColecoVision.
I played it at your house.
Oh, you played at my house.
Yeah.
ColecoVision controller. It's got a knob. It's got 2 buttons on the side. The 2 buttons on the side are one button. They're not separate. They both just say button yes, button yes. So really, this thing has one button and a knob. The knob twists, pretends like it's taking. It doesn't actually register that input.
Really?
Yeah.
Does it press in or anything?
No, it doesn't do anything. It's just a 4-way joystick and a button that there are 2 of. And then look at the keypad. The keypad feels terrible to press.
Wow.
I grew up with
was
this.
it like those like real rubbery?
Yeah, it was
the
the domes that you.
Oh, those are.
It's kind of like on the top of a soft drink at a fast food place where it's like it's
you
got
punch
the 4
in,
bubbles.
yeah, you have cola
it
with
feels
Sprite,
like
yeah.
that.
Oh God, that's yeah.
So it feels really bad. It creaks. The problem is like a lot of the games required you to use buttons 1 through 4 to choose the difficulty to start the game. They're kind of like the start button. No, this.
Well, but so would you say D or would you say throw it away and just leave it off the tier list altogether?
I mean, we should put in D because it's funny to have next to those. We don't have a lower one, but it is sub D. It's definitely sub D. It also had this coiled like phone cable that you had to connect. It was short.
And we did actually have like the phone jack.
No. What's funny is it had a serial port, which is identical to the Genesis controller. So if you waited 10 years and got a Genesis controller and put it into the ColecoVision, it's a superior. And that's what I do now. I play my ColecoVision with the Genesis controller.
Nice.
It just works. The only problem is you don't have buttons 1 through 4. So
you
I have
can't
to
select
swap.
your difficulty.
Yeah. So yeah, it's bad. Feels bad. It just it does not feel good. This is the first thing I gamed on though. So like I have nostalgia for it, but even back then I was like, it ain't right. It ain't good. No.
I will say before we get to the next thing, since we did forget to add it to the ask Dylan to add it to the list, the Atari controller, which
Atari
was
2600,
2600 and 5200 controller.
Yeah, so it was a joystick and a button.
Yeah, it's a square box with a joystick that stuck out with like a little like neat rubber bib, so you didn't get any like crumbs in there.
Yeah,
and it had one red button, orangey red button that was concave. Button felt great to press. I would just press the button.
Well, I hope you like it because that's all you're pressing on that whole.
Yeah. But
yeah. So that one, I mean,
I wouldn't even rank that because
it's again one of those archetypes, right? It came up and
that
it was formative.
I really did like the little rubber bib. As a kid, I was just, you can't get crumbs in there. This is great.
The rubber bib did feel cool.
I don't know why I was worried about crumbs, but I was like, crumb can't get in it.
There we go. So I'm still going to put a D though. It still doesn't feel great.
D.
It is better than the ColecoVision controller.
Do you want to play Pac-Man with a Slim Jim and a Skittle? Yes, then get an Atari controller. Otherwise, wait till you get to anything better.
Yep.
And use that.
Moving on, we got the Dual Sense controller.
Dual Sense for PS5. It had like an advanced haptic feedback. I think it has a couple motors in it, or a couple solenoids. I think that's what they're called.
It had really fancy force feedback, but even more than that, force feedback on the triggers that like fight you back, and
depending on
they make the trigger
what the games
feel different, right?
Yeah, so it would feel, especially playing like any game that was like a shooter. Like I played Destiny 2 with it, like almost exclusively for the first like 1,000 hours I played Destiny. It felt perfect. There was, and I was playing on PC, so it wasn't even designed to use the force feedback on the triggers.
Yeah,
but DS for Windows, like converted this, like did like its own version of it that worked very well. So it was like always on, always present, but it always felt really good. Like the farther you pulled the trigger, the more rumble it would give you, like simulating feedback.
So I haven't used this a ton. I don't have anything bad to say about it. I guess my one question, does it still have a touchpad?
Yeah. So the middle section is a touchpad. Right. The whole thing clicks. It feels much better. It registers more accurately than the PS4 Dual Shock.
So where would you rank it on the list?
It's weighted perfectly. That's the only controller I think is weighted better than the Pro controller is the Dual Sense. I would put it A tier.
A tier?
Sorry, not A tier, S tier.
S tier? I'm fine with that.
Yeah, it does have joystick drift issues, but everything on this list does. After like GameCube. So I'm not really gonna hold that against them too much because everything has it.
Yeah, I feel like I need
S tier.
To play that some more. So it's crazy. The PlayStation controller has the same configuration and we have it spanning all the tiers.
So that's what I was saying earlier. I feel they're all different in ways that are better or worse than each other. So relative to each other, I feel like they need to be spread out.
Yeah. Now we move on. Okay, so this is the Xbox Series controller, which is nearly identical to the Xbox One. I don't think anything's really different in it. The buttons, the face buttons are a little chunkier, a little bigger, little more pleasant to press.
I think like the plastic is different. It's like less. It's either more or less like glossy than the other. Like it might be like textured differently, but I think otherwise they're built the same.
I mean, if it's the same as the one, I would probably S tier it as well.
I think we should have S tier 1 though. I don't think because if they're the same controller, we shouldn't have it up there twice.
But it's not the same.
If they're effectively the same.
Well, all right, here's the difference. The D-pad has the weird octagonal thing instead of a cross. Does that move the needle? A? Okay. Yeah, let's do A. Just because of that, they changed the shape of the D-pad.
That's enough to change it substantively.
I've heard that it's just as responsive, but I can't speak to it. So yeah, A. We'll do A. Because I really do like the Xbox One. It's great. All right. Moving on to another weird one. We got the Steam controller. They don't make this anymore.
I mean, they did use the same like components in the Steam Deck controls, right?
Well, they took ideas from it. Yeah.
Oh, so it's not actually just like that touchpad and they put the touchpad in there?
The Steam Deck feels way better.
Way better. Okay.
Way better. The Steam Deck is actually really comfortable. This was innovative. It did tons of awesome things. It didn't feel great though.
I'm starting to sense a pattern with us.
Yeah.
There are things that are innovative that started like a whole new branch of like control. And we say it's deficient because it's not good at playing games.
Yeah.
And then we have stuff that nobody else likes, but we think it's really good at playing games and we put in S tier.
Yeah.
So I feel like I've only used it a bit because I touched it once to use it and it repulsed me to my core.
Repulsed, just the feeling. Because it had this haptic thing when you would slide your thumb over those touchpads, those giant touchpads. It did this haptic tappy thing, and it was
trying to mimic friction.
Yeah,
but as if an alien was like an alien that lived like in a higher dimension was like, what is this friction that third dimensional beings face? Let's figure it out using mathematics and AI. And I will
say it's the only controller that's ever made me motion sick playing games
with the controller.
Because you use that right stick, the right pad as like a mouse look. And the mouse look, for whatever reason, I was trying to play Half-Life, and it made me sick. And I was like, I've never felt sick playing a video game before.
Remember how it feels, and imagine using that to play like oh god, yeah. No.
The software behind it was incredible, and they carried that ahead. And I loved.
Did the software have to make it work? Like, was this taped it together with software?
Kinda, yeah. But it had this, it was basically like a pass-through layer for all inputs that Steam can use to take any input and turn it into anything on the other side, which was neat. On a PC, like you can configure till the cows come home. But
they also use that software for everything else nowadays.
Now.
Yeah.
Because they
made it for this, yeah.
I would say D or T.
D.
Yeah.
D.
We'll put Steam Controller D.
Anything that makes us throw up could probably be in the deficient D tier.
Probably. All right, here's one. This is the TurboGrafx controller. Did you ever actually use this? Because I
never used this. I played the Turbo graphics portable.
Okay,
which, it looks very similar. It looks like it has different buttons, though. Like they weren't like those same buttons added onto the portable.
No, it was the same. It's basically an NES controller. The only difference is it has turbo
hump in the middle.
Yeah, it feels
turbo's like built in, or
it's got a toggle that goes in three positions for each of the face buttons.
It looks really dumb.
I thought it looked kind of cool in a 90s sort of, Blade Runner-y aesthetic.
It looked cool, like a 1992 Corvette looked cool.
Yeah. So it was a lot. So the NES probably felt better though. It's hard not to put it on the same. See, I think it might be a C tier. Because I use it now. I do use it to play like old games. Mm-hmm. The D-pad's pretty good.
Use it with the analog?
Not with the Pocket. I use it with the Mister though to play FPGA games. And it works great for that.
I'd give it a C tier if you.
Yeah, I'll vouch for C.
You're saying it's basically an NES controller.
It's basically an NES controller, but it's got the built-in turbo. The turbo is what makes it TurboGrafx. Otherwise, the graphics are not turbo.
I thought the graphics are supposed to be turbo, not the control.
The controller's the turbo part. Oh. Yeah, so it's there. And now we get to laugh a little bit. We got the Jaguar controller. Atari's most recent game console.
No, the Lynx is after the Jaguar, isn't it? It's before?
No, I think it's Lynx before. Yeah, because that came out before the dawn of 3D, and Jaguar was a 3D system. This thing's trash. Look at it.
Just look at it. It's got a T9 keyboard.
They took the worst element of the ColecoVision controller and said, let's do more of that.
Well, wait. Do they share? I wonder if they share any people in charge now. Like if Bush didn't Bush not work at or found ColecoVision?
No, Nolan Bushnell was Atari.
Okay. He was always Atari.
Yeah, and I think he was way out by the time the Jaguar was coming in.
I'm like, did somebody try to redeem themselves for the ColecoVision?
So this is really, it's sub D tier, just like the ColecoVision, but we got to put a D. Like there's
put a D tier.
Most of the buttons on this are numbers, and why would you need that? People play Doom using this. Can you imagine playing Doom with this controller? But it does have, all right, the sideways select and start buttons like the Super Nintendo. It pulled that over.
But then it also put the face buttons sideways.
So next up is one I've only felt a couple times, the Famicom controller. So this is the Japanese equivalent to the NES. What's different about it? One negative. It was hardwired to the Famicom itself with a short cable. So if you wanted to play like on your couch, you had to pull the whole Famicom back and play it.
Did it have a long ass RF cord?
Did not have a long cord. Yeah, a long RF cord to make up for it. But it had a microphone built into it.
Yeah, there were some games, right, where you could like speak in like Dragon Quest or something had something like that.
I don't know if it was Zelda did though. When they had the whistle. You're supposed to whistle a tune into it. A couple other games.
That's just cool.
Yeah, that's cool. So it's got like some neat stuff going on. Also, I guess you could argue it is the progenitor to the NES controller, which set the tone. And the red and gold's kind of fire. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
I love the red. I wish it was a different red. Like if we're talking aesthetics, because the buttons are black, the D-pad's black, and then it's just like a bright red, but not a bright cheerful red. It's like a bright, you put some lipstick on red.
Yeah.
Which doesn't make me think video game console in the 80s. But yeah, it has the microphone, which is better than NES controller. It's hardwired, which is worse. I'd put it in C tier.
I would say C tier. Let's put it in there. So we know all of the NES likes are in the C tier, which makes sense, I guess.
And then we have ColecoVision again.
So we done. We did all of the ones that were on this list. I know it is by no means an exhaustive list of all controllers, but this is a good start. Good Lord, look at that. I kind of feel good about this list, though.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything I would revisit now that we
put all the Sega stuff B tier. All the Sega stuff is
like that's where it belongs.
Yeah, it kind of belongs there.
I feel bad now about putting the N64 controller in C tier.
I don't feel that
bad.
But
also, yeah, so to pose the question I posed with that one to the other ones, what if you could use any of these controllers in S tier?
Yeah.
Over any of the other controllers underneath them?
Yeah. I would.
Oh, sorry, yeah. So assuming you would do that, are there any in A tier any in C tier that you would use above a B or A tier controller? For like general purpose gaming, not a specific game.
No, I don't think there is. This kind of looks right to me. Do you think you'd be like the N64 you'd move up? You
not the N64. I think I would move up the Dual Shock.
The Dual Shock.
I don't want it moved up because I hated that one so much.
Yeah, leave it where it is. You got a beef.
I wanted it in D. I still want it in D, but C is fine.
What's the difference?
The Sega Saturn controller. If it wasn't for the crooked behind D-pad, I would move it up. But it's crooked as hell.
Crooked. This feels
GameCube. I feel sad that it's in B, but I understand.
Yeah,
it's lucky it got to B tier.
No, GameCube's an A.
No, not GameCube. Dreamcast.
Dreamcast. Yeah.
Sorry, it's lucky it got to B.
Yeah.
So I don't even want to bemoan that one too much.
And really, all the S's, I'm just like, yeah, they're the kings. Like, I would want to use all of those. This feels right.
I think we've settled.
Good job. All right. Wow, that was a journey. But yeah, I think we got it. So you got it, guys. This is the definitive list of controllers. So
the ordering on the tiers are not indicative of anything.
Indicative, no.
If we had to pick an overall number one,
yeah,
which one would you pick? I'm thinking Wii U.
Wii U Gamepad. Wii U Gamepad overall. Yeah. Take that, everyone else. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
You probably have to move the SNES. You got to move the SNES over. Yeah.
There we go.
Thank you, Dylan.
Beautiful. I like that. I want to print this and put it on my wall. Just be like, "Thus spoke Chris and Steve." Yeah.
I will say I've been using the Stadia controller for since Stadia shut down. And I was like, oh, I got a free controller. Might as well use it for stuff. I like it a lot. I've replaced my Dual Sense with it because the Dual Sense got stick drift. It's too light. Like it feels like the Xbox 360 controller.
Yeah.
But it's lighter. And therefore I don't love how it feels. Like it feels too insubstantial.
Right.
Which I just bought a new controller. From 8-Bit Do is a company that makes a lot of like themed controllers or like
replacement controllers, I would say.
Yeah, but he used a different thumbstick technology. He used like magnets.
Yeah.
So it doesn't get drift over time because the analog sticks for most controllers use wires that you push left and right at various or up and down at various degrees. And those wires get out of sorts and then they never get back into sorts.
Yeah, I'll have to track that out.
But yeah, I'm waiting for one any day now. Maybe I'll bring it in and we can do a review next time we do like a Let's Play thing.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
But for now, let us know how you liked our tier list.
Yeah.
It was kind of fun.
I had a ton of fun.
We interesting conversation. We learned a lot about controllers. We learned a lot about ourselves.
Yes.
We hope you learned a lot about controllers and less about us and more about the controllers.
Yeah.
We're enigmas to you, you see. That's why you come back and watch every week.
Learn more and more each week. Thank you so much for watching.
Yeah, if you want to chat below in chat or come into the shop and talk to us about any controllers you have preferences for, you yell at us for putting GameCube not in S tier. Yell at us for putting Atari down in D tier if you want. You'll be wrong, but you can yell at us all you want.
If you really ask nice, we will let you touch our Wii U controller and you can behold the glory yourself.
Oh, that was a real horse one. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
YUNKJunk!